Namaste and welcome to this week's program of Living Wisely, Living Well. Daily readings of inspiration written by Swami Kriyananda. And I'd like to begin with today's reading. But first, let's begin with the short prayer. O Infinite Spirit, be with us this morning. May we feel Thy presence, Thy infinite peace and calmness, Thy joy in everything we do. Om Shanti, Shanti, Amen. Now, today's reading. Swami Kriyananda, he writes, "Be patient with people. Remember, it takes incarnations to emerge from the pit of delusion. Think how long it probably took you to reach your present level of understanding, and how long it often takes to rid oneself of even one major flaw." This topic of patience is a very good one. And when we look in our own lives, we probably remember the times when we've not been patient, when perhaps impatience has overcome us. And when I read this and thinking about this morning's discourse, I thought, yes, I remember. Many times I've lost my patience and I've always seemed to regret it afterwards. Isn't that so? And the one incident I remember from many, many years ago involved me becoming impatient with my daughter. And my daughter now, of course, she's in her 40s, and this is a long time ago. But when she was a little girl, probably 5, 6 years old, she was trying to do something, and I was in a hurry. And you know how children are. Adults in a hurry, parent wants to get going, and the child is dawdling, trying to do something simple. And I was anxious to go, and I said something, and I said it kind of in a, come on, let's go. I mean, it was in a little bit in the wrong tone, angry tone, getting her. But she was trying her best to get going, but I was impatient. And I remember she stopped, and she looked up at me, and tears started coming out of her eyes. And I went, oh. I felt so bad. And I felt bad. I remember it still to this day. You know, there are probably other times too. If I look back, I can remember those times when I was just impatient. A little girl, she couldn't. I mean, she was trying her best, and she just couldn't do it. And here was this adult, supposedly, hustling her along with impatience. And if it's not a little girl, in this case a child, who of course is learning to try to come up to a certain level and accomplish all these very complex things that it takes to be able to live in this world. In the same way, we sometimes lose our patience with others, and because people happen to be grown up in adult bodies, we think that they're accomplished in everything. Maybe in some little simple task of tying their shoes or whatever it might be. Yes, they got that down very nicely, but all the skills it takes to live successfully in life, it takes a long time. And I think we look within ourselves and we see that, yes, I haven't learned that lesson yet. And over again, sometimes we do the same mistakes, and in the same way, other people too. Each of us have our own lessons to learn. And it really, practically speaking, it doesn't do any good to get impatient with another person. It doesn't help that other person to express your impatience towards them. And it doesn't help you either. It just makes you stressful and takes you off center. But it happens. And we have to learn this lesson oftentimes again and again and again. Now, if we look at ourselves or other people, either one, we see that we're made up of all sorts of qualities. Some of them we've perfected pretty well. We've got under control, but all of us probably have some things that we're still working on. And I've often asked myself, does a person really change that much in a lifetime? You know, some of these, we grow up as adults, and some of the things that are as a child are very obvious, are limitations. But as we get older, how much do we really change? I don't think we change all that much in terms of our essential qualities or our essential characteristics. we're pretty much the same person as we grow up. But I do think what we do is with our qualities, we refine them. And certainly we do if we're making an effort, a spiritual devotee, as a person that's spiritually trying to uplift themselves. We have certain qualities and we work with them and we refine them from a lower level, you might say, to a higher octave. And little by little, they begin to express themselves better and better in a higher way. But the quality is still there. And really, this process is one of transmutation, you might say, because that same quality is a certain sort of energy that we express. And when we express it through a low filter, it comes out one way. But that very same energy, if it's expressed in a higher way, it comes out in a very different way. Now, let's take, for example, something like, let's say you're very fixed, you're very stubborn, you're that sort of a stuck-in-the-mud type person and rigid in that sort of way. Well, obviously, you can express that in one way, which is unpleasant, and it's not going to help other people or your project or perhaps eventually not even yourself. But that same fixity of being stuck can also have a positive side to it. You're stuck on the pursuit of truth. You see, you're persistent. Or perhaps you're extremely loyal, you see, to some principle. Now that's roughly the same quality, but on a lower understanding level, it expresses itself through what we might consider a little bit of a negative quality. But if you take that very same energy and you begin to transmute it, you begin to refine it, you begin to polish it, and it begins to come out on a higher level. And so this, in the sense, as we grow on the spiritual path, much of this is what's happening. Often we look at ourselves and we say, oh, I'm never going to change. And we think we need to become a different person. You see, and we see some other person, we say, oh, we admire them, which is good. I mean, to look at other people, to be inspired by other people, we admire them and say, I want to become like them. Well, yes, that's a good thing, but you want to really, what you're doing is you're looking at the qualities within yourself and taking those qualities that are particular to your karmic situation and refine them and become the best you that you can be, but not in the egoic sense, in the sense of those qualities. Be a beautiful stained glass window through which the light is shining, and your stained glass window will look a little different from somebody else's, but it's the purity of the colors that come to the point where each of the windows can be very beautiful. So this takes patience, because it doesn't happen quickly, but we have to look at the direction that we're going. The same thing when we be patient with other people. We try to bring them along at their own pace and in our own self, having, you could say, being calm and centered in our own self and helping, you could say, helping other people and being tolerant of other people and realizing each of us in our own way is moving toward our highest potential. And if we can help that within another person and ourselves, well, then certainly do that. But realize it's at each person's pace. Now, I think this is one that when we talk about being patient with other people, obviously that's something we need to learn, but also we have to remember to be patient with ourselves, because we stumble again and again. And I mentioned that little incident of being impatient with my daughter. Well, that probably wasn't the only time I was impatient with her or with other people. And each time I kind of go, oh, I have to learn that lesson again and again and again. And slowly, we refine. And sometimes people go through an entire lifetime and they made a little progress. That's to be celebrated if you made that progress. But if you don't perfect it, this is what reincarnation is about. We have to come back. We come back again and again, polishing those qualities and improving ourselves on those levels. And I think also it's said that we don't remember our past lives, and that's a blessing, because oftentimes when people look back on their lives, they remember the failures, the times they stumbled, the times that they bumped their head, and did the wrong thing, and we begin to identify that, oh, I'm just a failure, I'm not ever going to make it. And reincarnation, you could say, gives us a clean slate. It's not totally clean because underneath there we have all these tendencies, but we don't remember, so we don't identify with the mistakes. And we don't perhaps identify with the successes either, because those successes are not really success, or failure is not who we truly are anyway. We're God's children, and we're playing this role, and this ego, you could say, we're polishing it, but eventually even that very polished ego, that too needs to be set aside. So we don't identify. But yet, while we're residing in this home of ego, we need to be able to lift it up too, so that it expresses more cleanly, because then it's easier to be able to discard. So don't, you might say, be impatient with others, and at the same time, don't be impatient with yourself. And you also have to realize, when dealing with other people, that sometimes it's going to take them a long time to change. And even in this life, the only thing that you can really do is to wait. The impulse, of course, is to help other people. A noble person tries, of course, to help others. But sometimes even that, you just can't do it. The best thing you can do is to support that person in the best way possible, but they have to learn their own lessons. And I think this is something all of us need to learn, that people have to learn their own lessons. If you overly, you might say, parents sometimes overly protect their children, overly prevent them from learning their own lessons, and then they don't learn them. And yet, at the same time, a good parent, I think, tries to protect that person so that they can learn their lessons without inviting the total disaster, you could say, in their life. And in the same way, I think Divine Mother is our divine parent, is protecting us in that way. We're learning our lessons, but in the background, behind everything, I think God protects us so that we don't always end up in total disaster. And little by little, that guiding hand leads us ultimately to perfecting ourselves. Now, Swamiji, he wrote something else that I wanted to speak about this morning, about patience, and I want to read this. It was in a different one of his different writings, but he says, patience means also adjusting to whatever is in life, rather than wishing it were something else. Patience is a prerequisite for every type of success. For it is when we work with things as they are that we can change them to whatever we might like them to be. So let me just read that first line again. Patience means also adjusting to whatever is in life. You know, you don't like something as it is, and so we get impatient with it. It's just a fact of life. Life is what it is, and it's not going to change just to suit our likes and dislikes. So we are the ones that ultimately we have to change to be able to accommodate ourselves to that. And other people, particularly, this is where it expresses. We see other people and they just don't conform to what we want them to be. Now, what's that word that often comes up when people are talking? And sometimes I have people that I sometimes, who have allowed me to remind them that, you know, it's that word should. You know, you may want to moderate that a little bit, because sometimes people say, well, that person should be doing X, Y, and Z. Should be this way, should be that way. Well, why should it? Why should it? It's not. And if life isn't that way, if other people are not the way you think they should be, whose responsibility is that to accommodate to that? Now, yes, I know people do make mistakes or act foolishly, and maybe it would be better for their welfare if they change. But to go through life with that attitude of this should be that way, is revealing a certain failing within our own selves, and the inability to accommodate ourselves and to recognize what life is trying to teach us and how life is. And we have to be able to accommodate that, because what happens is if we go through life wishing things to be other than they are, there's a mental thought in our mind that's pushing it away. You might say, it should be this way. If only it was this way. If only life had offered me this instead of that. If only such and such had been different, then I would have been different. On and on and on. These if onlys that's in the background of life. And what are we doing when we say that, or mentally? We're, in a sense, in non-conformance with truth. This is, you might say, one of the yamas of we don't want to affirm an untruth. And in a sense, that's what we're doing. We're lying. We're lying because we're trying to affirm a false reality. If only it was this, or by not recognizing that which is. And so consequently, we're living in out of attunement with reality, with truth. So to be able to put that mental tendency of wishing things to be other than they are. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have ideals in life. We would like to improve something in life. We would like to make things better, like to help other people perhaps. We see injustice in this world. We see things that aren't very nice. Doesn't mean that we necessarily need to say become indifferent to those things. But if you want to improve something, if you want to help another person, you want to improve yourself, if you want to improve this world situation socially, what is the first thing you have to do? You have to be able to see it clearly. And that means recognizing things as they are right now without imposing the filter of your own biases of likes and dislikes. Ought to be this way, ought to be that way. And just step back and see what is happening here. And that was one of Swami Kriyananda's favorite sayings, which he actually took from another person who would say that, and he liked it so much that he began saying it. What is trying to happen here? And you begin to see it. Okay, this is going on, that's going on, without your own prejudices imposing. And then you begin to say, well, wouldn't it, this room is pretty cluttered, you might say. Now this room isn't cluttered, but if you go, in your own home, you say, well, this isn't it, and it just makes me feel restless. Oh, maybe if I straightened it up. Now that room is our own personality, our own life, everything within inside of ourselves. To be able to see the clutter in our own mind, in our own habits, in our own ways of dealing with this world, is the first step for us to be able to then rearrange it or put it in a way that maybe is a little bit better. By the measurement being, am I happier? Am I more successful in the sense of what I'm trying to achieve in life? Do things work better? Is there greater harmony in my life? These sorts of goals that we have, in order to move in that direction, we recognize, well, this isn't right. This is blocking me, that's blocking me. And we then can begin to think about a solution. Not about what I like or dislike, but what might help this solution, or other people, what might help this person, what might, or if socially, if you're looking out, what might bring greater harmony to something that's not right in the world, if you want to address that. So you have to see. That allows you then to fix it. And I think this is this ability to just see life as it is, and then move from there. Now, this takes a bit of ability of a person to be adjustable, to be able to be flexible. Going back to that quality we talked about, some people are so fixed that they cannot flow with the realities of life around them. And this, of course, is a quality too. That ability to be able to adjust to realities in a positive way is a good expression of a characteristic in ourselves. Other people, they adjust, they have no anchor because they have no central point or fixed point of perception of what's right and what's wrong for them. And then you might say, they become wishy-washy, or they become unanchored or untethered in their principles, and they're accommodating to everything with no central point of focus about within which to relate to life. Now that's the very same quality or energy quality, but expressed on a lower level. And of course, these things, if you understand yoga, these are expressions of various chakra energies that we express depending upon the level of our own inner awareness of what part of ourselves we're expressing at that time. So from a yogic point of view, what we're learning to do as we refine ourselves is we're learning to uplift our energy, but also to clarify and bring out the highest of our qualities of whatever octave we're working on in life, is bring out the highest potential for any of those. And so this ability to adjust and be accommodating is perhaps one of the first steps in order to be able to be effective, to be able to see life as it is. When things go, I think all of us have this experience in life for ourselves, is when things go terribly wrong. We had this great project, we had this great thing that we were trying to do, and all of a sudden it just totally collapses. And we get really frustrated, and we get very impatient, we get really intense, and we express ourselves emotionally perhaps in the wrong way. And it's understandable. We've all been there and all done that. But a emotionally healthy person says, okay, I didn't like it, but immediately say, okay, what can I do about it? That's an emotional healthy reaction to being able to change and accommodate and then move forward in a positive direction. What's the unhealthy way people do? Why did that have to happen? Oh, it's always happening to me. It was that guy's fault. Somebody else, and they go on, and they dwell on it, and they wallow, maybe is even the better, colorful way to say it. They wallow in it. And I think they start to, very subtly, they get their joy out of, you might say, wallowing in that self-pity for why did it have to happen. And the longer they do that, the longer time it's going to take them to come to the point to actually get out of that puddle that they found themselves in. And it reminds me of that story from Paramahansa Yogananda's life, where the lady had come to him and for some personal counseling and was telling him about the terrible operation, that she had gone through, and the pain she had suffered, and it was just really terrible. And Master listened, to her, okay, and she went on, and of course, this terrible pain that she had suffered, of course, influenced her life greatly, and you might say her life had arranged itself around that terrible situation. And then Yogananda asked her, said, well, when did this happen? And she says, 20 years ago. Well, there you have it. And this is sometimes, we have to be able, just you might say, to be able to let things go when other people, their fault, and maybe it was their fault, but you got to let it go. And because you learn the lesson, then you move forward. Well, it's the same thing with ourselves. Things happen to ourselves, and we have these, you might say, psychic operations on ourselves. It's done. Now, what was the lesson? Let's move on. Because to the degree that we self-identify, we hang on to these things, that's how we're limiting ourselves. We're building up a structure of ego self-identity of I'm a type of person that just things happen to, and I'm no good, and I have accidents, and I'm a failure in life. People take it to that extent. Well, let's turn it around. It's not that we have to identify ourselves as successes. Rather just let it go. We're neither. We're neither successes or failures. We are who we are, and we move forward with that. We try to perfect this little tool that God has given us. You might think of it that way. Why God is, other people express in different ways, and we express in this way, but we're neither of them. And God is expressing in this way, so it's an instrument for God to express through us. Make it as nice as possible, but then eventually, however nice that nice vase is, or glass jar, or beautiful picture, we put it aside, as we're none of it. We're none of those things. We're God's children. But in the meantime, don't let the ripple or the storms of this life, don't let them throw us off. Our goal is to be centered, to be calm, to be able to be detached and do what's appropriate for us, given the tools that God has clothed us with, or perhaps you might say our own karma has clothed ourselves with. And don't let the storms affect us in that way. And especially, you might say, in this, the storms are sometimes hard to avoid and hard to deal with. There are big challenges in life. And those are perhaps the things in this life that have been given to us to be able to strengthen us and the lessons that we need to learn. Well, while we're learning those, don't let the little ripples of life, maybe that's a better way to say it, those little ripples, don't let them consume us. And that's what you might say patience is, a quality that helps us be able to overcome those. They're the little ripples, the things in life that we just let them go and not be affected, be centered in ourselves. And then we can put our energy into dealing with perhaps are some of those things that are a little bit more serious for us, and giving special attention to those. And one of the secrets of that is don't identify. We're not that. We are given the responsibility to deal with those qualities, what God has given us, what our karma has brought with us. It's our responsibility, yes, but it's not who we are. And I think one of the very best qualities to have, and you might say tools in our spiritual toolbox, is this quality of patience. Be patient, but not bunjai. Little by little, working, and finally trying, and eventually victory. And having patience, knowing that at the end there is victory. And this is what the masters are trying to do for us. They're trying to help us take that one step, and finally, through the practice of persistence and patience, we ultimately get to our final goal. Many blessings to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on Living Wisely, Living Well. Joy to you.